Welcome guys, this is video lecture, I'm not sure, but we are on August 20th. It is a Friday, happy Friday. We are going to be starting the notes that look like this. They are labeled scientific method. So if you will turn in your notebooks to this page, please, we're going to get started. Just a reminder, when you're doing your vocabulary sheet looks like this. When you're doing your bell ringers look like this. You'll put the date on your bell ringer and any information you need for the bell ringer. Let's get started. Okay, so today we're going to do the bell ringer. We're going to do some vocabulary. We're going to do some scientific method notes. We are actually going to hold off on the scientific method practice in the airplane lab until a later date. Here's your bell ringer. Can you recall the parts of the scientific method? So for this one, you will write the date on your box of bell ringers. So today is August 21st. And then you are going to write however many numbers you think there are in the scientific method and what you think the parts are. This is just a way to gauge your knowledge. Please just write those down. You can pause the video because I'm going to go over the answers. So pause it now to write down your answers. When you're ready, go ahead and push play. Welcome back, guys. So the different parts of the scientific method are: number 1, ask a question or observe a problem. Number 2, do some background research, find out what other people already know about this subject. Number 3, construct a hypothesis. Just a reminder, a hypothesis is a tentative explanation that can be tested to determine if it is valid, true, and they are formed as if-then statements. We're going to talk a little bit later about what that means, the if-then. You're going to test your hypothesis with an experiment. You're going to design the experiment, carry it out, get some results. You're going to analyze your data, and you're going to draw conclusions. Then, most likely, you're going to repeat your experiment. Sometimes we have experiments that have things that are wrong with them, so we have to repeat them. Sometimes we just need a bunch of different trials to increase the validity of our results. Here's your vocabulary for the day. There you go. You should be able to see all of it now. You're going to go ahead and pause this video to do your vocab. All right, you should have paused the video to write down your vocab. We're going to get started with those notes. So if you will, turn in your notebook. Here we go. So in science, we are constantly attempting to understand the world around us. Why do we do this? We do this because we're curious. As humans, we want to know why things work the way they do. We want to understand the intricate workings of the world, whether that be in our physics world or in our natural world. And also, in order to understand the world, we need to have a goal in mind. This is where the scientific method comes into play. All right, so you shouldn't have written down anything for those slides. Here we go. The scientific method is a logical approach to solving problems. There are 6 steps to the scientific method. You're going to ask questions to see a problem, do some background research, construct the hypothesis, test the hypothesis, analyze the data that you gained from your experiments, and draw conclusions, and then you're going to repeat, most likely. Okay, so we're going to go over each of those steps in depth. Step 1, here we go. Ask a question or observe a problem. Our description is right there in the box. You observe, right? So you see, hear, taste, smell, feel, analyze. Something that causes you to ask a question. We are going to have, through these notes, an example experiment or issue, and so each of the steps will have that. So our example is you go to your car in the morning, and when you try to crank the car, it won't start. What is the problem? What could be the problem? You can come up with a couple of different questions. Could be that your starter's not working. You might not have put gas in it. Lots of things can make a car not work, right? So you first observe a problem. The problem is that the car won't start. What you're writing down here in your boxes is the box in gray. Description, you observe, right? Number 2, you do some background research. So our description, you hit the books, you search the web, you find out what others know about this question. What's the first thing you're likely to do in our practice problem? If my car's not starting, I might look around in the car engine, right? I might try to see and find out for myself what exactly is wrong with my car. Why is it not working? I need to get to work, right? If by chance I'm going too fast for you guys, the wonderful thing about watching a video is that you can pause it. So you can pause me at any time that you need to. Number 3, in our scientific method, we construct a hypothesis. Description, recall a hypothesis is a tentative explanation that can be tested to determine if it is valid. It's going to be an if-then statement. If-then statements means, well, we'll do our example first. So after talking to your parents or searching the internet, you believe that the battery is dead. So our hypothesis might be for this, if the battery is dead, then when I replace it and get a new battery, my car will start. Or if I put a new battery in my car, then the car will start. That's an if-then statement. If we're talking about some other kind of science experiment, say we are testing for photosynthesis in a plant. My if-then statement, we're going to try to see what variable you need for photosynthesis. Do you need light? Do you need water? Do you need heat? What do you need? Do you need soil? So my if-then statement might be, if my plant does not receive water, then it will not grow, right? Could be something like, if my plant is not planted in soil, then it will not grow. Wonderful. That is constructing a hypothesis. After we've got our if-then hypothesis created, we're going to test it. So we are going to create an experiment that lets you test your hypothesis. We're going to learn a little bit later that there are a bunch of parts of an experiment, but that's for later. How might I test my hypothesis of, if I replace the battery, then my car will start, or if I jump my car, then my car will start. I might put on jumper cables to my car and connect them to somebody else's car and crank it up. Did it work? That's the next step. Step number 5, you're going to analyze your data. So if you replace the battery, the car still won't start, then what can you deduce? So if I replace my battery, if I've jumped my car and it still does not start, what wasn't wrong? The problem was not my battery, it was some other issue, right? Our description for analyzing data is that you're going to read the information that you recorded from your experiment. Sometimes it's going to look like heights, weights. Sometimes it's going to look like, observations, like did the wind blow today, did it rain today, all that good stuff. Sometimes this means you're going to put your information that you gathered, your data, you're going to put it into graphs, tables, or charts to better be able to explain or see trends in the data. The scientists do it all the time. Scientists are experts at Excel. Sometimes this also means applying statistical formulas and manipulating your statistics, like trying to find your mean or your standard error to be able to understand your results better, right? So scientists do all kinds of things to their data to interpret the results. And lastly, we repeat. After your first hypothesis failed, right, because it wasn't my car battery, because I put a whole new battery in it and it still didn't work. So after it failed, you're going to go back and create a new hypothesis. So sometimes in your description, what goes in the box, sometimes you must repeat experiments to get enough data to be statistically significant. Other times, your problem did not prove to be the cause, so you must redesign your hypothesis and experiment, right? The battery wasn't the issue. I need to redesign my experiment and try again. So if it wasn't my battery, maybe if I put gas in my car will start, right? So then you try it. If you put gas in your car and your car still doesn't start, then the gas wasn't the problem either. Here is a nice, wonderful chart here for you of the scientific method. Remember, you make your observation or you see a problem. You ask questions, you do the research, you make a hypothesis based on those questions and research. You do the experiment. Did it work or did you get results? Yes, no, try to do new tests. Yes, we're not going to develop a theory because we're not scientists like that, but scientists might develop a theory if they have enough evidence and experiments to support said theory. But that's a talk for a later day. In our experiments, remember I told you we would talk about our experiments a little bit more. We have variables, so everything in your experiment can be labeled as either a variable or a constant. In your experiment, you have two different types of variables, independent and dependent. The independent variables is what you manipulate, right? So what did you change in the experiment? In the car experiment, we changed the battery. We didn't change anything else. We didn't put any more gas in the car for our first experiment. We didn't mess with the motor. We didn't check the oil. We didn't put new oil in it. We didn't do any of that. We only manipulated the battery. That's what we changed. That's what the scientists changed. The dependent variable depends on the independent variable. So what was the dependent variable in the experiment? So that would be, did the car work? Did the car turn on in our car experiment? Okay. So for your chart, you are defining independent variable, what you manipulate. Dependent variable depends on the independent, right? So it is the results, or it's what's being changed because what the scientist is changing. In the case of my plant, my photosynthetic plant, what I am changing is the presence of water. If there's water, then if there's no water, then the plant will not be able to photosynthesize, right? So we would try that. We would take the water away and see if the plant's still photosynthesized. So what I'm changing is the water. The results would be, did it grow? Is it alive? All that good stuff. In your experiment, things that don't change or things that change are variables. Things that don't change are constants. Constants are all the other factors that we do not manipulate, right? So we didn't change the spark plugs. We didn't change the gas. We didn't change the alternator of my car. All that we changed was the battery. So those are constants. Control is something is a completely separated group that you compare your results to. This wouldn't be in the case of our car experiment. This would be more in the case of doing experiments on living things, or two separate things. So if we are trying out a new drug, right, we want to see if it works. We're going to give the drug to a group of patients, would say the drug is for making your eyes better. So we would have a whole group of people whose eyes are not good, right? That's our group. We would split the group in two, and we would give one group our pills that we think are going to make our eyes better, and we would give another group, we couldn't just give them nothing because then they know that there's nothing going to be different. So instead we gave them something called a placebo. And that's a pill. It's basically a sugar pill. It doesn't have anything in it. It's not going to make your eyes better. But we're going to test that against the actual drugs to see the results, right? So if my placebo had effects where the people started seeing better and my regular drugs, something went wrong. What you should see is that your drugged patients or your drugged group does better. Your undrugged does not. Okay, so those go in your boxes. And lastly, laws and theories. We've given you the answer. A scientific theory can one day turn into a law. That is false. A law is used to predict what will happen while theories tries to explain. Example, when you drop a pencil, the law of gravity states that it will fall. It does not matter why it falls. That's our example. You find a fossil of half a reptile and half a bird. The theory of evolution tries to explain why. The law is used to predict what will happen, while theories try to explain what happens. There's a difference. Make sure you write them down. And that is the end of this video lecture. Sorry if I talked fast. I only have a 15-minute time limit on these recordings. So pause me if you needed to. Make sure you get your notes done. And have a fantastic day.